everybody, buenas noches. It's really wonderful to welcome you, whether you are watching us live or you are viewing or listening to this webinar at your leisure in preparation for the NYSAIS Job Fair to promote diversity on Saturday, February 21st. We are thrilled to welcome you. My name is Liz Fernandez, and for the last 26 years, I have coordinated the NYSAIS Job Fair, and I'm also a former candidate. I am really excited about tonight's panel. We have educators who will be speaking about their experience transitioning into independent schools from either different careers or different types of educational institutions like public or parochial or higher ed. So, and you might learn that a few of them are also previous job fair candidates. So they'll also be able to speak from that experience. If you are watching us live and you have a question that comes up, please don't hesitate to chat. Put the question in the chat directly to me, and I will pose the question to our candidates in the cadence that makes most sense. Without further ado, I want to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. Let us know where you currently work and what role you're in. How long have you been there, and what type of school is the school where you work? Tell us a little bit about whether you worked in a different industry or in a different school. Just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey, and ultimately, why independent schools? So you're getting lots of questions, but I know you're all ready. I'm going to ask Chantal, then Celeste, and then Sean to respond, and then we'll take it from there. So excited. Thanks again. Here we go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chantel Cleckley, and I'm currently an assistant teacher at Horace Mann. This is my first year after school, but my ninth year overall in independent schools. I started in Head Start slash daycare programs. Um, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I grew up, but once I found early childhood, it stuck. I think making the transition into independent schools for me was I wanted to do more than what I was doing at Head Start and daycares. And I was really looking to have growth opportunities, which I've been so grateful to be able to have over the course of my time these past 8 years.
Um, my name is Celeste Wu, and I started out being an English professor. So I was a professor for a really long time. I taught in 7 different colleges, both part-time and full-time. I got tenure, so I was promoted to associate professor and I had tenure in SUNY. So I had reached, what most people think is the pinnacle of higher ed. But at that particular place, I was utterly miserable. Worst job I've ever had for a lot of reasons. And so I was looking elsewhere, which was very hard. At that point, I discovered someone told me about Educators Ally, and I created a file. Nothing ever happened. I actually left academia. I worked for a lawyer for half a year, and I thought I'm never going to teach again. That was not true. I love teaching. And basically what happened is uh I worked for this lawyer. She laid me off after about half a year. And so then I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? So I started doing SAT tutoring and Regents tutoring and stuff like that. And I think that was absolutely the key that made me a much more attractive candidate for high school. I got hired in the Bard High School Early College system where you teach high school and college at the same time, and I loved it. I taught in Harlem, and that was a program housed in 2 charter schools. Um, and then that was in 2019. They cut the program after 5 years. So then I moved to a different Bard High School Early College in Newark, New Jersey, which is a public magnet school. And I was there through COVID. Then after COVID, things fell apart in many ways, and that was due to like basically New Jersey politics, not Democrat Republican politics, but just stuff. And therefore, I eventually ended up where I am now, where I'm thrilled. I'm at Trevor Day School, which is a nursery through 12, but I'm at the upper school, independent school on the Upper East Side. And this is my third year there, and I just love it. And I went to this job fair 2 years in a row. Ultimately, I did not actually get this job through the job fair, but the job fair was totally invaluable, including these webinars. I ended up, in fact, getting the job through Educators Ally.
Good evening. My name is Sean. I work at the Browning School. It's an all boys Upper East Side school, K through 12. My position is the Equitable Practice Social Impact Associate. Next year, I'll be the Director of Equitable Practice and Social Impact. And this is my second year. Um, my transition is very up and down. It's all over the place, so I'll just try to condense it. I was a gymnastics coach for 20 years. That is what I wanted to do when I grew up. I got to do it. It was great. And then I became a mom. I did teach public school brief for 4 years, as well as coached. And then I became a mom. I moved to New York or New Jersey, actually. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a little bit. And then once I was ready to go back into the workforce, gymnastics wasn't going to work with a 2-year-old because that's a mostly an evening type of a job or an after-school type job. So my friend said, why don't you try independent school? Actually, he said, why don't you try teaching? And I was like, nope, tried it. I'm good. He said, try independent schools. He had done public schools, he had done charter schools, and he said, try independent schools. I said, you know what? Let's give it a try. He told me about the NYSAIS job fair. I had already done a lot of, I had probably given out like 30 or 40 applications at that point, and I hadn't heard back from anybody. Um, and so he said, go to the job fair. And I got a substitute position from the job fair. And then that led to a lot of different things. I worked in a special education school for 7 years and then transitioned to the school where I am now. And I'm very happy. So that was the very, very short 30 plus year version.
But what I love about the themes across is that everyone has a journey, and it can be, pretty kind of straightforward, a little more like Chantel, or it could be a little more circuitous like Celeste and Sean. But either way, you're here, and our schools are thrilled, and we have three very different schools that are featured on tonight's webinar, which I think is also awesome. I'm curious if you could really reflect on the transferable skills that you were able to apply to your role from your previous employment and your previous life experiences. What were some of those areas that just made perfect sense for you to bring over? And I will ask Celeste, um, Sean, and then Chantel.
Okay, I have a little cheat sheet of notes, so I'm just gonna pull that up.
Love the
Um,
preparation.
I think, okay. Um, I have no idea how many people present might be coming from higher ed, but if there are people coming from higher ed, this is a slightly different way into that question, but I would say what I do constantly is I absolutely use my very like 20-year knowledge of of college as a real asset in high school. And I say, okay, I know where you're headed. I know the problems you're going to encounter, and therefore I can head them off now. And this is a huge, and I really mean it. And I really do it. And people love this about me. My students love this about me. My colleagues love this about me. It adds a certain like, you know, credibility. So that's one thing, but that's a specific higher ed comment. I would say coming from public and or charter schools, honestly, I think we are accustomed to such incredibly arduous, oppressive environments. And that can really parlay into some really good skills. Like, okay, I know how to juggle constantly changing rules, constantly changing uh evaluation, like what, the 14 things I'm being observed on. Um, all those things. And I think because we are so accustomed to that, it like on one hand, I'm not saying we should allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, not at all. But I feel like I am very appreciated where I am now at Trevor because I'm just not fazed by things that bother some of my colleagues. One simple example, I have a couple colleagues and they complain when they have to teach the last period on Friday. They're like, "Oh my God, it's Friday. It sucks when you have to teach the last period." And I was like, "Really? Like that's a problem?" Like I literally have a third of the workload that I'm used to in public schools. And so I'm just like, this is amazing. And so I think the ability to roll with IEPs, 504s, extremely difficult home situations for students. I've had students who are homeless, students who are traumatized in every conceivable way, and I know how to talk to them. I know how to adjust assignments accordingly. And sometimes when I'm accustomed to working with a very low income population. And when you move from that to a much wealthier, more privileged population, sometimes that can be a real asset. Like this is not shocking to me. I can handle it.
Celeste, I think that's funny because I used to laugh when they would say, I have to give you one more student. I would go, great, I'm going from 8 to 9, thanks. Like I worked in public school. So I think that's funny. I will say that for me, I have two answers to that. One is as a gymnastics coach and as a PE teacher and public school teacher, classroom management, classroom management is my strong suit. I don't know if anyone knows about gymnastics, but when you're wrangling like 8 little 3-year-olds from across one side of the gym to the next, and you have to get them to sit down and teach them all the things that you need to do, you develop classroom management skills really, really quickly. And I was able to transfer that really seamlessly into the classroom. I had to change the approach a little bit because Coach Sean is different from Miss Smith, but I was able to use that. Another thing that I found very helpful was the clientele that I found that wanted to be on the gymnastics team and they wanted to get into the program, and all of that stuff was very beneficial because it was almost the same clientele of people in independent school. Um, so I think that knowing how to navigate those types of parents made navigating parents in independent school as well.
Similarly, for me, going from Head Start, which we know is typically low income families, to having worked at preschools in Upper Westchester and like the Upper West Side, again, being able to navigate both those dynamics of families going into independent schools. Because despite what we may think, we do have families who are also in these situations. So being able to be aware and having seen how to support them in a place with less resources makes it a lot easier to do when you have those resources. And again, I think the classroom management is the biggest piece. You learn how to work with a little bit, and it makes it a lot easier to, as everyone said, oh, this is a very small fire compared to some other ones that we've had to put out before.
Well, what this reminds me of that I think you're all alluding to is perspective. And one of the transferable skills that you all have and that I also share as my journey within the independent school world has certainly been anything but linear. is that we gain perspective. Every experience that we have provides us with insight, and it fills our skill set or our toolkits so that we can bring that toolkit to the next opportunity. That leads me to wonder, if you had the opportunity to be literally the coach, Coach Sean, and, just be a mentor to all of our panelists and to all of our candidates and everyone who's listening, what advice would you offer candidates transitioning from either one career into our schools or transitioning from public or charter schools or higher ed to independent schools? Like what advice do you think would be really essential that you would want and would benefit from? Chantel, I'm going to ask you to go first and then Celeste and then Sean.
I think the biggest advice I have is let them tell you no. Do not sell yourself short. I think that was what probably took me the longest to transition into independent schools. And it wasn't until one of my old colleagues at the last preschool I was at moved to independent schools and was just like, no, there's a K position open here. I think you would be wonderful for it. I think, again, coming from Head Start daycares, I was just like, why would an independent school want me? And the mindset should be like, no, they should absolutely want me because we are all worthy of those positions. So let them give you the no. You don't have to do it for yourselves. And I think being authentically yourself, I think that's been the easiest part of transitioning into this space is I kind of code switched in the beginning of my time at independent schools. And then I realized I didn't need to do that because I was in an environment that allowed me to show up in the way that I was. And I didn't need to change that. And once you see that, it's such a freeing, wonderful feeling to know people are going to support you just for the teacher that you are. And that's why they hired you.
I think that's really nicely said, Chantal, and I would agree. I would say to be really reflective and just really honest with yourself and really think, okay, where am I at right now? What are the things that really nourish me and that I just am utterly passionate about? And so for me, I've had a lot of jobs and through all the pros and cons, it's always the students that make the job for me. Like they're always why I'm there. And on a different note, I'm looking at my notes. One really good piece of advice that somebody gave me when I was applying for jobs is that it's okay to say some of the things that are frustrating you with the public school system. Yeah, in other words, that doesn't like sink your candidacy. Um, and it's always tricky to say negative things. There's always that like, so why do you want to leave your current job? And it's always tricky to answer that. But for instance, when I was interviewing at Trevor, they were like, so why do you want to leave your current position? And I said, it's extremely hard to do. And like I was like, I'm really good at this. I'm really passionate about blah, blah, blah. And I said it's extremely hard to do these things when I am given utterly contradictory directives about what needs to be in my curriculum, and they are changing literally day by day. And that I am told to teach a college course, and on the first day, I am told I cannot pick any of my curriculum, and I can't do any of the college level stuff. And I just say it, and I didn't even have to get that far. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's really terrible." And so you don't have to bash, your current colleagues or your former position, but you could say, "Yeah, like this is what I want. These are the things that my current environment, these are the obstacles to really shining and doing the things that I really care about." And that it's okay to say those things, in my experience.
So I have lots of thoughts, but one thing that is coming to mind is finding a school that can appreciate your experience and can see the value in your experience. Like everyone's experience isn't linear and everyone didn't go to college and take all of these necessary steps to get into independent school. And that's the two schools that I've worked at the longest in independent schools, they were able to see that. They saw, oh, I see you have this experience. And so they trusted that I could use that experience for this position. And I remember in my interview process at Browning, that was the very first thing they said, I see that you have knowledge in this and I see you've done this. I'm so interested in that. Can you please tell us more about it? And they saw the value in um, my experience. And then I applied to so many other schools that couldn't look past this, and this. But there are schools that can see the value in your experience and where you are right now. The second thing is like, once you do get that job, find a mentor, find someone, because it is a transition. It is different from public school. It is different from charter school. It is different from your career. So having a mentor, someone who can, every school has their own little special quirks and ins and outs, the things that like you're just not going to know unless somebody tells you. Find a mentor who can guide you on your journey and help you navigate the changes um, and help you along the way.
Just to add a little coda to that, yes, absolutely. Find a mentor. Sometimes you might get assigned a mentor, which is great. Your mentor may or may not be the same person as, like, I would say find someone that you can ask really honest questions to. And just say, okay, look, I just got out of that conversation. Did you react the same way? Like an honest feedback giver, whether or not that is your mentor.
I appreciate your suggestions and just your advice. I want to add that as someone who has worked in corporate, nonprofit, higher ed, public, charter, criminal justice system, like I've had, again, like it has not been a linear path. One of the things that I always say to candidates is you need to know and understand what your skills are so that you can highlight them when you have the opportunity in writing in your cover letters, on your resume. If you're coming from a public or charter school where some of the language is very different. Some schools talk about special ed, some schools talk about students with learning differences. And they often are used, the vernacular of schools. Just look at the websites. The websites will tell you. They'll talk about learning center, the learning center, or the learning specialist. And so you can pick up some of the language so that you take out some of the very technical language in your resume from the public or charter movement, and you make it a much clearer opportunity to really indicate what skills you do have. Some of you are independent school alums. I'm looking at some of you and I know you're independent school alums and you have that as experience. And so whatever you've done from the moment you have completed your formal education to where you are now in your career, you've never forgotten what it meant to work with educators who cared deeply about your development, who identified curriculum and taught you how to be passionate about the arts, about science, about research, about English, about math, about languages and being able to communicate. And you use those skills each and every day. Those are transferable skills. That passion, that being a student once, that there was an adult that inculcated that in you, you are someone who carries those transferable skills. For those of you that are in careers like finance and HR and communications and marketing, all of those industries are present within our schools. We need people who can work in our finance teams and our business offices. We need people who are nurses, who can support and care for us. We need people who can tell the stories of the magic that's happening at our schools in the communications and marketing teams. We need people who are attorneys, who serve as school general counsel for our schools. And those of you that have worked in corporate or finance, you know how hard it is to motivate people. And motivation and all of that is part of what we also do for our students, for one another, et cetera. So there are so many transferable skills. You have to know what they are and know how to help them rise to the top when you speak about your candidacy during your hiring process. And speaking of, I'm going to toss, a question, whoever wants to go first. You've started to talk a little bit about your hiring process, like what people saw, but what was your process like? And if you've been to the job fair, talk a little bit about what the experience was like. What would be a piece of advice that you would offer candidates? I recognize it can be overwhelming, and it's also the only job fair of its kind, once a year in New York, with over 85 schools eager to engage with and connect and get to know candidates at the beginning of the hiring process. So what was your candidate? What was your process like as a candidate? And what do you think people can expect today? It's a toss-up, whoever wants to go.
I can go. So well, when I went to, I don't know if it was a panel, but I went to something before the job fair and Jason Craig Harris happens to be my person that was in the room. And we're all smiling because if you're in the independent world, you know who Jason Craig Harris is. And he gave really great advice that I used. And he said, put everything on the resume. Like, you do a lot at your job. Put it on the resume. Because I think I had been out of the workforce for a while, and I just my resume was kind of bland. And he was like, no, you do this and you do that and you do this. And like, he had us really take a step back and think about all of the things that you do and have done. And he was like, put it on there. And I did that. And then kind of going back to what Liz said, like, the one thing that I didn't do was pay attention to the language, because it kind of bit me in the butt a little bit later when it was time to talk about money. Because I'm from Texas, and in public school in Texas, you don't have to have a master's degree. And I was applying for a special education job, so I didn't have the right language. And so I couldn't get a head teaching job, even though I was a head teacher. And they said, but your resume doesn't say that you were a head teacher. And I said, but that wasn't what it was called. So, like, getting the language down, understanding the language that it's going to take to get the job you need is important, but put everything on your resume, because it really does, those transferable skills really does work. And then I've been on the flip side of, like, I've been at the job fair as the person interviewing candidates and talking about candidates. And I remember really, really enjoying people who really could talk about themselves and were friendly and talked about how much they loved kids, and they understood the school, what the school was looking for and what the school needed and what they could bring to the school.
I'll chime in. I agree. I want to second several things that Sean said. So yeah, the resume. I imagine that a lot of people listening to this panel are like us in that, yeah, you're not familiar. I was completely unfamiliar with the world of independent schools. But then I had, a friend and a colleague, and oh, this person used to work at Spence, and so I started gathering, these people that knew about this world and would tell me things and would help me redo my resume. And yeah, the language, like, I did not know what head of school. I was like, you don't say principal, you say head of school. Like, this was very foreign to me. So it's good to just sit down with someone and just be like, okay, just tell me some stuff about the culture. The job fair was, yeah, just wonderful for me because it was energetic. It sparked my own excitement. I liked the fact that I could talk to several people, like, you bring your resume, you can talk to people about it. You can have those kinds of instant interviews, or not even interviews, just sort of informational things. And I learned, for instance, in the job fair part of it, that some schools often like you to be able to teach cross-divisionally, both middle school and high school. I had no idea. I didn't know what cross-division meant. So I also really liked the more informal gatherings where I would be in a room with people that had been hired in the past, say, I don't know, 2 years, and just hearing their stories. And I just thought, okay, it felt like we getting into a foreign country. And I was like, okay, so now I get a little more sense of it. Um, I, I'll just jump to a teaching demo comment because because Liz sent us the questions ahead of time, I asked my department chair, I said, so I'm doing this panel. What were you looking at? Were you looking at when you go to teaching demos? And he said, absolutely, how the students react to the candidate. And he said, sometimes the candidates are kind of just thinking about the adults in the room, but he said it's all about the students. And he said, you were just like the students were so engaged by the lesson that you did. And he said, I could tell that this was going to be a really good fit. As opposed to, okay, so I got hired. This is my third year. My first year, they were like, okay, you're on a search committee because we got to hire somebody else. And so we interviewed a candidate, and we all agreed that this candidate was a very nice person. We had no major complaints about them, but they just were just dull. Like they just stood there and did not really engage with the students, even though there was like a really easy in, like this candidate mentioned a mentor in their own academic career, and I actually knew that mentor. So I was like, oh, and why don't you talk about your relationship with this mentor? And even that didn't, it was just like, yes, that's why I'm really passionate. I'm like, so showing your passion is really, really important.
I know for me, the demo was probably one of the biggest parts as well. And again, it was the feedback I got was a lot of the small things I did during my demo. Again, in early childhood, maybe like just the way I positioned my body or how I modulated my voice for the kids. Those were a lot of the things that stood out during my demo. Again, knowing the school you're going to and having a good understanding of that. Like you said, there are a lot of people in here who know other people at independent schools. So use those people as your boots on the ground to get that background information that you're not going to get from the website or any of their social media. But I think knowing what you look for in a school is just as important as what the school is looking for, because a lot of times we kind of want to get one of these names from one of these independent schools on our resume, and it might not be the good fit that we were expecting. So like truly understanding what you value as an educator before you go, because like Celeste said, you might have all the experience, but you might not just be the right key for that lock.
Fantastic. I'm going to get very clear about what candidates can expect. So independent schools are notorious for committees. So there will be, you can apply either through a search firm, and we've mentioned a few, there are many different search firms. You will likely look for, go to a school's website and look under careers or employment or some tab that tells you exactly where to go and look for what positions are open. Read those position descriptions very carefully. They will tell you a lot about the position, about the school, and in the job description. Look for some of those keywords, identify some of those keywords in what's in your resume, and take, we were talking about making the adjustment on language. That's a really good skill to practice across schools with multiple positions. Just look at how your language on your resume mirrors or is supported by what you see in the job description. The job description is also going to tell you who to address a cover letter to. That is really, really important. If you're working with a search firm, then ask the person who's assigned to you for guidance. That is one of the expectations that they should have to be able to guide you as a candidate. But if you are leading your own job search process, I'm telling you now, looking for a job is a job in itself. So be organized and look at the name of the school. What's the position? Maybe hyperlink it so that you know when you applied, who did you send your information to? How did you write your cover letter? Include the information the way they requested it. If they say all in one PDF file, send it all in one PDF file. If they say, please, separate, then you separate. Whatever they say to send them, that's what you send. Don't send more, don't send less. And I say this to candidates all the time. And as someone now in my own role at my own school as head of upper school at Brooklyn Friends School, when people apply, they send me all this extra information that I don't really want or need. I am very clear about what I want. And for good reason, because of the volume of applicants that are coming in. So you apply, you get a phone call, or you get an email. They want to schedule time with you. Start doing your homework about that school and about that position. Start finding out who you know that might work, or as Chantal said, somebody knows somebody. And think about, is it a short conversation that you're going to have, like a 30-minute check-in? It's going to be pretty quick, or if it's a little bit longer. And then once you get past that point, really think about, you get the call that they want you to come in. Who are you going to meet with? What is the age of the kids that you're going to be doing a teaching demo for? If you're going for a teaching role, if you're going for a different non-classroom role, who might you meet with? Look them up so that you know something about them. Our schools are notorious for doing committee work and inviting people to meet with committees, and there's a reason for that. Some people talk about it being a fit. I don't use the word fit. I use the value add, because you're bringing part of who you are into a community that is looking, if they were looking for exactly the same person to fit right in, and that's okay with you, then fine. Then it's a perfect match. I've never looked for a perfect fit. I've always looked for a place where I can bring all of who I am and all of my skills and add to a place in a way that will make sense. And then what to do as a follow-up. And I guess that's my question to all of you. What does effective follow-up look like, both from the job fair and from the experience of applying? What advice would you offer candidates as the proper way to do follow-up in 2026? Whoever wants to take it, take it.
I'll take it first. I think, as Liz said, whoever you spoke to, make sure you have their name and their contact information, even like the smallest detail of the conversation you had with them, to include in a thank you note afterwards. Even on my side, when people are coming in for interviewing, I might have had a one off conversation and I've gotten beautiful thank you notes afterwards. And I've been able to take that back to my committee to be like, this person I talked to for 5 minutes remembered in such great detail why they wanted to be here and might be a great candidate for this position. So really making sure you address everyone that you spoke to. It might seem tedious, but trust me, it will be really important for them to see that you're willing to talk to, like, during my hiring process at Horace Mann, I think one of the assistant teachers in the room, it was literally a hi and bye. I had to spend no time with her other than that because there wasn't time in the schedule. She still got a thank you email because she was still a part of that process in that classroom, in that environment. She knew those kids better than I did. And her input, even if it was just for a second, would have been valuable to the people who were looking at me. So making sure you address everyone that you had a chance to speak with, I would say.
You're teaching me something. I don't think I thought of that thoroughly when I was applying, but absolutely just sending thank yous. I have heard just random conversations where a colleague will say, "Oh, yes, we had this candidate and they didn't even send a thank you." And so it's noticed when you don't send a thank you. And the world of independent schools is rather small, and people know each other. And so I think if you don't do that, then that can burn a bridge, which you wouldn't want to do.
Um, I'm on lots of hiring committees, and I will say that communication is key, whether it's the thank you, whether it's the prompt reply to the email, whether it's the the communication is what really kind of sets the tone. We get candidates in all the time, and it's how well do they say, I appreciate the phone call, because it usually starts with a phone call. And then after that, we have a Zoom with more people on the committee, and then they communicate, I really enjoyed speaking with you. Like, just constant communication to show your eagerness at the school is great. But also, if that school's not the right fit, that also goes a long way, because you're letting the committee know that you respect their time and that you don't want to go forward, because that might come back later, because you might change your mind in a couple of years and say, you know what, this this didn't work out. I mean, we had a wonderful candidate. She was perfect. And then her mother got sick and she couldn't take the position, but she communicated all of that to us. And like, we loved her so much that, like, if we needed her in 5 years, we would probably come back to her, because she was so communicative. She was really great with the kids. And that really stuck with us. And kind of going back to what Liz said about, or the demo lessons, um, like, demo lessons are the kind of like the one place where we really get to see who you are as an educator. I mean, you can put all the great things on your resume, but the demo lesson is who we get to see who you are and how the kids respond to you. I sat in a demo lesson that was fully in Spanish. I do not know a single thing that they talked about, but it was the best demo lesson I ever saw, because I did know what they were talking about, because he made it so clear. And yep, sign him up. He's perfect. But I mean, it was really his engagement with the kids, and he was super prepared. He had everything printed out. He had name tags ready for all of the kids. Like, he was so prepared. Um, and then the subsequent interviews after, and the communication after, just made it perfect. So communication is really the key.
Thank you all. We have a question that's come in, and I want to pose it and want to see, given your experience, how you all would answer. And to the candidate who submitted the question, just know that I'm also really committed to connecting with you and following up afterwards. And that goes for everybody. If you have questions directly, please don't hesitate. That's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this job fair, because I know how it can open up doors of opportunity. So the question is, for someone who has spent 2 decades leading educational initiatives outside of schools and now works directly within K through 12 systems, what are the most effective ways to translate that experience for leadership roles within independent schools? For someone who's spent 2 decades leading educational initiatives outside of schools and now works directly within a K through 12 system, what are the most effective ways to translate that experience for leadership roles within independent schools? Does anybody want to offer a response? Let's pretend you're on the hiring committee.
I think it's a very good, interesting question, and I absolutely am not sure what I would say, because it is, I mean, I taught in higher ed for 20 years, and I've only taught in an independent school for 3 years, so I still feel rather new to this world. I'm still much more familiar with the world of college. But I would hazard it just speaking as someone who also has many, many years of experience in a different arena. I would say, just being clear and being quite confident about the really great skills you have. Because Zenda, yeah, obviously you know a lot about the world of education and schools, and you have so much to offer, value added, like Liz said. So maybe, yeah, because I think independent schools definitely don't have how do I put it? Like the rigid protocols. They're much more fuzzy in the way they do things as opposed to public or higher ed. And so maybe you could just like this would fly at Trevor if you just called or contacted the head of school or the head of the upper school and said, "Hi, I've heard great things about your school. I just wanted to tell you about my own experience. I've spent 20 years, blah, blah. Just, if you have positions open, these are things I'm interested in doing." I don't know. That's kind of but being able to just really speak to, okay, this is my experience, this is what I'm good at, um, and just sort of offering it in like an informational interview. I don't know.
It might be beneficial to reach out to um I forgot what it's called. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I want to say an organization that can help you with resume building because I think this really is about how you're marketing yourself more than anything. I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning about um, taking your abilities and putting them on the resume in a transferable way to education, independent schools. And that might not be something you can do by yourself. I know that I didn't really get good at it until I got someone to help me. But this might just be a case of getting someone to take your skills and put it in a resume. Like, I mean, I did work with Educator Alley. That's how I got my current position. But that's what I did. I gave them my resume and they kind of took a look at it and gave me advice to help me make it fit for what I wanted, which I knew I wanted to leave the classroom and go into administration. So they helped me. I had lots of administration skills outside of the classroom. So they helped me to put it on my resume so that it was highlighted for what I was looking for. So I think that might be helpful than trying to do it yourself.
I would I would add to what Celeste and Sean said. First and foremost, you've led educational initiatives, which means you've had to work with a mission, you've had to work with a vision, you've had to work with a budget, you have had to do some design thinking and imagine where you want to lead and go to, and then work backwards and motivate a team to work towards that goal in order to accomplish, guided by the mission and vision of the institution or the organization. Um, you're working within K through 12 systems. So you are around educators who are passionate about what they're doing. You're around young people who desperately need to be led, so that they can hone in on their own leadership skills at a time where they don't know what is accurate information and what is information that is fabricated, because of the onset of AI and just all the different ways in which information is no longer factual. We can't believe everything that we see. We can't believe everything that we read. And so you have the uncanny opportunity to think about and talk about leadership at a time that is so critical for young people. And you've done so for a period of time to accomplish whatever the goals are. And you have metrics that you can translate and transfer. What I also want to say to those of you that are listening is there is also a little bit of you got to pay your dues. And please don't think that because you were in one position that was a senior leadership position or senior administrative position that there will be a quick and easy transfer over. It doesn't always work that way. If you're applying for an administrative position, you may be asked to do a demo. And I realize we use this language very quickly. For those of you that are listening that don't know what a demo is, it's a demonstration lesson. It's a sample lesson. That's what a demo lesson is. We just shorten the word because I realize sometimes we use language and I get emails and calls from candidates who are like, what's that? So taking care of that. Um, but within a very short period of time, you can enter a school through one door and five more open. Our schools are notorious for believing in distributive leadership and being able to hone in on the kinds of skills that they're looking for different initiatives, whether it's a strategic plan or a strategic vision statement. And you have those skills, volunteer for committees so that you can tap into the ways in which you have grown professionally in other fields and you're now bringing this to a school. Um, there are so many ways, and that's why I said this is a question that I really loved and that I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to highlight. And the second question and follow-up conversation we will have, I promise. I do want to make sure that we have time for one question that almost always comes up, and that's how do salaries and benefits compare? The transitions from the roles and positions that you were in. We're not talking nitty-gritty, let's talk numbers, dollars and cents. That's not what we're saying. I think people want to know what are some of the realities because at the end of the day we have bills to pay, families to support, and lives to lead. And so, as you think about the salaries and benefits comparison, you've alluded to smaller class size, which means fewer um, comments that have to be written, fewer assessments or papers or labs or tests that need to be graded, fewer people that you have to shepherd around into spaces. Um, so, all of that I think is also important. And also, toss in, because we all know food, the meals that are part of the benefit package that we have, the reduced fare on things, the professional development opportunities, so we can get a richer understanding. Does anybody want to answer first?
Sure, I will. For me, the sal my salary is significantly higher at Trevor than it was in my former, like, this is the highest salary I've ever had. And so that is obviously great. I realize that is not true, for everyone, so for some people, moving from a public to an independent school means a pay cut or just a horizontal. I have one colleague who also came from a public school, and he has said, somewhat jokingly, but not totally, he said, I would have taken a huge pay cut to come here just because I wanted to get out of that particular public school so much. So all the reasons that you are applying elsewhere, including, like, for me, one time I was applying elsewhere because I strongly suspected that the program that I was in, which I liked, was going to get cut. And sure enough, it got cut. So yeah, obviously we apply for jobs for many different reasons, not just because we are unhappy. But for me, yeah, so A, the salary is great. B, the benefits are mostly great. Um, the flip side of this is to not assume that just because you are perhaps moving to a wealthy independent school, that all the benefits are going to be great. The dental benefits are like awful. Everybody seems to agree with me. Um, but I did not know until, I had accepted the job, and then my partner actually said, "You know what? I think you get free lunch." And I said, "You're kidding. Really?" And I get free lunch, free breakfast, um, coffee and tea. And that is obviously a huge benefit in terms of saving me money and time. Um, I had a friend who uh, had worked in independent schools before. So she told me when I was applying, she said, uh, you are going to have a third of the work that you have now. And I just thought that was a friendly, exaggerated comment. No, I literally have a third of the work. I have so much time, and I still work fairly hard, but it's nothing compared to, I mean, I have a third of the students. That means a third of the piles of Xeroxes that I have to carry around, a third of the essays to grade. Um, So there are so many intangible things that ideally uh, an independent school job can give you. Obviously, that's not a guarantee. It depends on everyone.
My experience was completely different. Currently, I make the most money I've ever made, but it didn't start out that way. I could not, like I said, I couldn't get a head teaching position, so I had to take an assistant teaching position, which was a huge salary drop for me. And so that was kind of challenging. And my school didn't have free lunch or breakfast, so I still had to deal with that part. The benefits I thought were really, really great. For what I needed. But once, I had to work my way up to a head teacher, and now I'm in an administration, and so I make more money. But it was a big salary cut for me. I mean, I made it work. It was fine. But I did, that was another thing that Jason Craig Harris says, like, always ask for more when you get your contract. There's always more to be had. And every single time I asked for more, I got more, with the exception of once because they were like, we keep giving you more, like kind of stop asking us. But fight for that contract. But now I'm at a school that we have breakfast and lunch and snack, coffee and tea. That tea is important. Um, Water. We have the school where I am at right now. Every staff meeting, we also have snacks, which is great because at the end of a long day, to have the snacks is really great. Um, the benefits are okay. They're not the best, but I make it work for my family. There's different tiers of benefits, so you can find what works for you. And my current job includes dental and eye, what do you call it?
Vision.
Vision, thank you. It is included, which is great. And I think I have a 403B at this school. My last school had a 401k that they put in a certain amount. So it's just like there's really great packages. My benefit plan at my last school was an HSA plan, and at the beginning of every year, my school automatically put in $1,000, which my current school doesn't. So that was like, I was like, oh man, that was very, very helpful. But I've made the adjustment. But I want to be clear, like everybody's journey is different. So
Thank you all. So I'm going to close this out, but I'm going to ask you, as our closing thought, to answer what keeps you in these schools. So in one word or a very short phrase, while you're thinking about that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining this evening, whether you joined live or you're listening to us on your own time. We are here to support you in your journey. The NYSAIS Job Fair is on Saturday, February 21st. It's from 10 to 1 p.m. It's at Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We are here to support you. Jobfair@nysais.org is our website. Please help us spread the word about this job fair in all of the many venues and networks that you are part of, including online and in social media spaces. We definitely want to make sure that we get as much information out about the job fair, and your support in marketing is greatly appreciated. Thank you to my team at NYSAIS and Shannon behind the scenes, always grateful for the support. And now I go to our incredible panelists. Thank you so much for giving of your time after your long days. We are very grateful, and we'll let you have the last word. Chantal, Sean, and Celeste, what keeps you in these schools? One word or a short phrase?
Visibility. Kids need to see people who look like us, whether they look like us or not. So being visible for all of the children.
I just simply love kids. So that's why I'm there.
I would say kids, and I would also say I have never until this job felt so appreciated and liked for being a teacher.
Beautifully said. Sean, Chantel, and Celeste, thank you. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay warm and stay safe. Take care.